Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to a very big episode 372. It is Wednesday, November 12th. I am your host, Paul Rieckhoff, and I hope you had a great Veterans Day. We definitely did here on the show, and we're going to continue to keep that theme of spirit and values and patriotism and unity, the best parts of Veterans Day all week long. We've got a huge show today. My dear friend, an American icon, a true inspiration, Henry Rollins is here, and the news keeps on coming. Epstein apparently mentioned Trump multiple times in private emails, a new release from the House Democrats show. That's going to be dominating headlines. The shutdown is ending, but still not yet. The House could vote as early as today, but people are still screwed and planes are still being grounded. I'm flying to Columbus, Ohio today, so wish me luck. The American military has not struck any boats in the Caribbean today yet, but those strikes continue. Trump went on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and continued his expanding dominance of the manosphere, sports media, and platforms focused on men. And in contrast, Army basketball hosted Duke basketball, and Coach K was at West Point for what I thought was a really meaningful and giant teaching moment on Veterans Day. It is the day after Veterans Day. I am pretty beat up, but Henry Rollins is here. He is back, and Veterans Week continues, and now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. All right, folks, here he is, maybe our greatest returning champion, a living legend, a legendary artist, spoken word master, punk rock icon, USO volunteer, patriot. You know him from Black Flag and Rollins Band. I think I first met him when he had the Henry Rollins show on IFC many years ago. He is one of, I think, the most important voices on gut check time. When you really want to understand and break down where we are as a people, where we should be looking going forward. A man whose friendship I really value, a guy who's always been in my corner, and especially during Veterans Week, has always been down for veterans. I am very proud to welcome back on the show the great and powerful Henry Rollins is back. Welcome back.
Hello, sir. Good to see you again.
You don't do this a whole lot. You don't do podcasts very much. So I am very honored and thankful that you're with me.
I couldn't say no to you, sir.
Well, you call me sir all the time, and I call you sir all the time. Because you have military. I knew you were going to be on time, too. You were early, because you know in the military, if you're on time, you're late. You were, of course, early for this conversation.
I put the punk in punctual.
You do. And let me ask you, Mr. Rollins, as I ask all of my friends and all guests who join us, where are you today, and how are you, man?
I am in my home, my little home studio, which I use for my radio show on KCRW in California. But I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I've been here for many years. And so I'm broadcasting to you live from Nashville. It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful state. And the people, in my opinion, are incredible.
And can you tell us about the room you're in? That looks like where the magic happens. You mentioned you do your KCRW show.
Yes, I'm in here a lot. It's a small house at the end of a dead-end street in Nashville. And this is the attic. And so when I moved in here, I told the He-Man Alpha builder guys, I said, I need a small room that sounds good. Because I do a lot of voice work for like animation projects and my radio show. And so they basically built this out. And so the blue you see behind me is a towel to create some bounce so I can see myself. The dark you see is the beacons mats that were cut and pasted to the walls from the actual move I made from Los Angeles to Nashville. So we resourced the moving mats because I paid for them in full. And it's as good as I can make it, and it sounds pretty good, and it's maybe not podcast TV show grade, but it's what you're stuck with as long as you're talking to me.
It's what we're thrilled to have, because you don't do this much, and if there's anybody who keeps it real, it's Henry Rollins. So getting a look into where you make things happen is really, really a privilege. This is a great reason for folks to be watching us on YouTube, because you get to see Henry. And if you've ever seen his spoken word shows or seen him perform, you know why that's important. You know, the last time we saw each other in person, man. I don't know if you know this, was Valentine's Day 2020 in Los Angeles. It was the last live show we did before COVID hit. I spent Valentine's Day with you. You were my Valentine. And then the world turned upside down. I think it was like a week later. That was an awesome live show, but
Yeah.
that seems like a lifetime ago, man.
Yeah, I remember that was a really good talk we had. And my life really changed. I mean, everyone's life really changed. I used to be quite the world traveler. I've been to like 80 some countries, like at least 85 countries. And I had my second trip to Antarctica planned, already booked, and partially paid for. And so, it's not a cheap trip. And then suddenly everything is canceling. So I had to kick and scream to get my money out of that. I had to cancel trips to England because I was going to do some work for the BBC, and on and on. And I just finished a tour of 27 countries doing a bunch of talking shows. But I don't think travel is ever going to come. Well, it's not going to come back to what it was for quite a long time. And so, that was one of you and I doing the show together was kind of one of the last cool hurrahs before the world changed quite drastically. I think we're still in many ways emerging. The masks are off, but we're still emerging from everything from inflation to supply chain issues, et cetera. It just shows you how complicated and tricky the world is and why you need leadership that understands these subtleties and nuances. Like in my supermarket, things go away for like a week at a time. Like, really? We can't have milk? Come on, man. Like, find me a cow. And so you see that these world crises are shared by the world, and we need to communicate with other countries. And that's why that isolationist, we alone, like, really? Everyone's breathing, man. Like, we're sharing air, and we all have to be talking to each other because when something like this happens again, and hopefully it won't, you're going to need every other continent, every other prime minister, president, king, whatever. Everyone's got to be online talking to each other and communicating with no hesitation. Otherwise, it's going to be even worse.
I'm so glad you brought up your travels because we've been friends now for, I think, about almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And we'll stay in contact from time to time. When I see you doing something, you've been so supportive of me over the years, man. I mean, sometimes, I'm fighting a good fight and I'll get a note from you and I want you to know how much it means to me and gives me a boost because I need it sometimes, but also have so much respect for you. And it often comes from a country. Like you would be in Africa somewhere, you would be in South America somewhere, but you are such a well-traveled person, but also identifiable as an American. Folks know you around the world. They know your work. They know your music. Can I ask you, I want to get into so many things. I want to get into Veterans Day. I want to talk about Venezuela. I want your thoughts on Trump. But can you've been a guardian of democracy and I think a guardian of what it means to be an American. Can you talk about, coming out of the election, Veterans Day is here. How do you feel the health of America is right now? How do you assess where we are as a country and how do you feel as an American?
Well, I'm loath to use the word hate because it's kind of limiting, but I hate the divide in this country. I have surrounded by neighbors. I live on a street. There's other houses on it. I know most of my neighbors. We might disagree on any number of things. I will always support them. They are nothing but friendly to me. In my neighborhood, I go to the supermarket. Hey, Henry, like, hey, man, I'm talking to everybody all the time. And this divide that America is currently enduring, and hopefully it's temporary, I find it unacceptable. I find it outrageous, preventable, and on purpose. And to me, the health of America, you'll never beat America. America's never going to be knocked over. But we have such an amazing version of freedom. Our version of democracy, our definition of freedom is so unique in the world that it's very hard to maintain it because you have to be a good person. You have to be decent in order for this thing to work. And so if those ideas aren't rigorously applied from birth to senility, you can lose the plot. And I think we're failing on that level where just basic levels of decency have plummeted. And, you got to start at the top. When you have a president who posts distorted photos of Rosie O'Donnell, like, really? What are you, 5, man? You're the president of the United States. You shouldn't be saying like BS during a speech that kids are watching. Like, kids are supposed to want to be like you. I don't have any kids, but I wouldn't, if I had one, I wouldn't be able to show that young person the TV screen and say, aspire to that thing. Like, I can't do it. And so that's what really bugs me about where we are in the country right now. And I'm not blaming people I disagree with. I'm blaming the rhetoric and how people in power are not putting their foot down and saying, enough. These are my colleagues across the aisle. We do not denigrate each other. We're all college graduates. Most of us are lawyers. We're all rich. So let's get along. And I think we've entered into this kind of era of childishness. And the internet is helpful with that. You could be a keyboard warrior and say all kinds of things anonymously underneath articles on news sites. And it just seems to me we've gone into some kind of schoolyard thing. And I'd like it to end because the kids are watching, we adults, as we comport ourselves really horribly. And for a future country that needs to be aware of the rest of the world, going at the speed of technology and having peace and progress going forward, I don't think we're exactly promoting that in 2025 right now. And my complaint starts with the top, not with the citizenry, not with we citizen infantry, we with our feet on the ground. I always blame the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches, because that's where I think where our in a way our marching orders come from and our examples come from. And so America right now has the flu, but it's not terminal. Absolutely not. You'll never beat this country. It'll never be knocked down.
That might be a perfect segue into what I think should be our top topic for today. The last time I spoke to you, Henry, the show was still called Angry Americans. And we've evolved a bit, but we're still angry. I wore my angry shirt, in honor of that spirit. And, we said a lot about how if you're not angry, you're not paying attention, but you have to turn that righteous anger into impact. There's a part of this in talking to you that I want to make our top topic for today that I think brings it all together. For today's top topic, I want to get into Venezuela and Trump and our democracy and the division. But I also want to say that I think we need to bring back punk rock. And what I mean is the Henry Rollins version of punk rock, because I think there's like so many other things, there's a misinterpretation of what it is. But it's your grit, it's your spirit, it's your toughness, it's your creativity, but it's also the other side of the coin, which is your discipline, your focus, your commitment. Anybody who knows Henry Rollins personally knows he is a good role model for our children. And punk rock is about the spirit of this country. And we actually had Joy Taylor on last week, and she said, where is punk rock? And so let me ask you that, Henry, let you run with the ball here. Where is punk rock? Is it here? Has it always been here? Is it in places we're not seeing? Do we need to bring it back? But I would say no matter where it is, it's time to elevate, amplify, and spread the spirit of punk rock.
My version of it, I come from Washington, D.C., so that's the scene I sprang from. And we were always a very egalitarian scene in that if there's a girl, when we were young, a female, young woman playing bass in some band, no one went, why does that band have a girl? It's like that. She's the bass player. Like, no, it never came up. Like, you can't be in a band, you're a girl. That was never a topic with us. And our idea of punk rock was everyone should eat. If you're gay and you're in our scene, you're gay and you're in our scene and we accept you, you're one of us. And so we didn't have those walls put up. There was a remarkable lack of misogyny, homophobia, and racism. We were all just a bunch of weirdos. So like as Bobby Bird of James Brown's band used to say, I know you got soul because if you didn't, you wouldn't be in here. So if you're at the show, you must be one of us because you had to drive many streets to find this hole in the wall to dig this Bad Brains Minor Threat show or whatever was happening that night. And so for me, the idea has always been that we are morally sound in that we're not degenerates, in that we're not going to beat up on a gay person or a woman person or a non-white person. And we reject cruelty and brutality in that if someone's going hungry, fix that. Like, that's a problem. Someone's being maligned, someone's being threatened, someone's being intimidated. You should neutralize that. Because if it was happening to you, you would hope the cavalry, like your friends, would come in and do something. And so for me, it might be a bit sounding like I'm kind of throwing cold water on what would be a good orgy. But for me, it's always about doing the right thing and calling out what you see as wrong and not being quiet about it, not being complacent. Like the idea that complacency is basically you're agreeing by not calling that guy out on what he said. You're tacitly in agreement because you didn't make your opposition known. And I'm not looking for a fight. I'm not looking to, I'm almost 65. Any 17-year-old can knock me out. I'm just saying to walk by something that happens that's bad and not assist or in some way attempt to neutralize. That is the anti-punk rock. That's being part of the problem, not part of the solution, which obviously I didn't come up with that idea. But my idea of punk rock is very much the idea of solution after solution and looking at things as problems that need to be fixed. What I would like to see in young people in this country is that they really, and this is maybe just, every generation of young people should understand this. It's about to be your country. Like, you're 17, you're still living with your parents, you're in high school, you're eating their food, you're living under their roof. But one day, at some point, you're going to be out of there. And you're going to be your hands on the steering wheel. Because, your parents are going to be like eating oatmeal, trying to find their pants. Like they're going to be old and wandering in fields. And so it's going to be your country. And what country do you want to live in? What kind of America do you want to have? And it's going to be the America that you insist upon, that you advocate for, that you vote for, that you protest for, that you spread the word and not accept anything less. And I think young people really need to understand that in 2025, I don't know if there's been a time since I've been alive and aware of things that has been more important for young people to have these ideas and ideals and to feel this duty to make things right. Because in my opinion, we adults have screwed up monumentally here and there. Not you. I'm just saying it's us. It's the older folks. It's not the 17-year-olds because they can't vote yet. They don't have the capacity. And so we need to look at ourselves and go like, man, we got to leave them a good place, and they got to see it in themselves that they really need to get to be hands-on. And I see a lack of that. And I think I'm going to sound old. I think the internet has a lot to do with that. I think the cell phone has a lot to do with that, where you can have relationships via text. You don't have to confront, and you can say all kinds of things and no one has to know who you are. That's one of the reasons I don't write things on sites. I don't want the anonymity. If I'm going to say it, you're going to hear me. Like you're going to see me say it to you. And I am very hesitant to disparage anyone by name unless I'm in a room with them, unless they're an elected official, because they're public and they're making decisions for me and I get to have an opinion. But, if I had a beef with my neighbor, I would bring him in here so we could hash it out in front of you. And so I think with the internet, you're allowed to have these relationships that are not immediate. They're not analog. And I think that has been detrimental. And I'm not trying to sound like, now, kids. I'm just saying that we have lost some ground. And that's why I am very happy when I see young people protesting peacefully. But, they got up off their ass and they went somewhere and they have an opinion. And that's at least half of it. Having an opinion, being informed. And then what are you going to do with that fire in your belly? Hopefully you won't shut up. As Flavor Flav used to say, hang loose and never shut up. That's good. And so that's to me is punk rock. And I know I tied quite a long tail onto the end of that kite, but I'm 64, almost 65. And I still feel punk rock because these ideas are still relevant to me and I can't find fault with them. And I can't find any way to improve upon the model, if you will.
This is why when you came on the show a couple years ago, it was the most listened to show we've ever done. Because I think you have, you are. And folks know this, you have a very dedicated following, and folks, when they see you pop up, they want to know what you think about the world and what's happening, because the punk rock spirit is kind of fundamental to America. Like, in my view, George Washington is punk rock, right? But there's also kind of a bastardization of the spirit that you see, because there's always a fuck you to the system, a want to disrupt, but also the desire to include people and recognize we're in it together, and not just have it be nasty or vengeful grievance, but have it be something more productive. And you,
Sure.
the way you explained it, I think it is such an important insight into this time. Where on this show, we've been talking a lot about how, especially young men in this country, feel disconnected and isolated. But a lot of people, women, men, feel disconnected, feel isolated, feel angry. And there are folks, I think, especially Trump and Hegseth and others, who are manipulating the kind of most powerful parts of punk rock, but leaving out the most important parts. So they're leaving out the inclusion, they're leaving out the community. And I want to ask you to reflect on that, because there's some punk rock in Mamdani, there was some punk rock in Obama, there's punk rock in everything happening. But what Trump has done is this kind of masterful manipulation of the super hyper toxic radioactive masculinity that manifests itself in mean ways. Yesterday he was at Arlington Cemetery, which I want to get your thoughts on, and gave what I think was another nasty and inappropriate speech that most folks didn't see. But he was also on Pat McAfee's sports show, which a lot of people see, and a lot of young people see. And you mentioned, the 17-year-old living with mom and dad. Now, oftentimes, is a 27-year-old living with mom and dad and feeling disconnected and feeling isolated. And punk rock was often the place for people to go when they didn't feel like they had somewhere to go, because everyone was welcome and because you could put that emotion out in a positive way. So I want to ask you, two things if I can, Henry. Number one, there was also a point where punk rock had to identify itself while there was waves of skinheads and Nazism emerging, right? And punk rock kind of checked itself, right? And defined itself and said, that's not part of who we are. Trump's not doing that, right? Trump's not checking that. He's doing the opposite. He's embracing white nationalistic tendencies. He's embracing divisive language and racist language. And I want to get your thoughts on that part in particular, and get, how did you guys deal with that? How did punk rock deal with the rise of extremist elements that wanted to hijack punk rock or wanted to invade punk rock? And what can be learned about that now as similar elements try to invade our democracy and our minds?
In the 1980s, I was in a band called Black Flag from 1981 to 1986. By 1986, I think the guy's name was Paul Metzger, a white supremacist out of California, very ambitious, and he understood that there's a lot of angry young white men, males, going to punk rock shows. And you shave the hair off a white guy and put him at a punk rock show, that they kind of look a bit alike. But I started to notice as we went through like Florida and Texas, I go, wait a minute. I saw that guy 4 days ago. Like I recognize him. And then like 3 days later in Orlando, like, whoa, you're back again. And I just thought, man, I'm just tripping. But I'm dead sure it's the same guy. It was. Metzger was flying his like top recruiters to Black Flag shows. He was putting money down to send them. And quite often I would see these guys in front of our shows in the early afternoon when people are kind of starting to congregate around, and they were handing out everything from leaflets to newspapers. And I would stand and basically debate with them to the amusement of everyone around. And then they're like, okay, Mr. Rollins, whatever you say, everyone listens to you. I'm like, yeah, well, right now they should, because you guys are awful. And I still have some of the newspapers that they were handing out with all the character drawings of all the usual suspects and all of that. And how, hey, white man, wake up, you're being preyed upon by, these people and these people, they're vampires. And they would come to shows and recruit, because there's a lot of angry young people there, bad scene at home, the bad stepfather, and they're bad. And they go, you're angry? Hey, you want to be angry? Come over here. We got something for that. Like, you should be one of us. And like, here's who's, you're mad. Here's what's, here's what the problem is. Like, you walk to school, that guy. Yeah, well, that's happening where we are too. And you should be with us. And so I watched that. My best friend, Ian Mackay, in the 80s he was in the band Minor Threat. He's also in the band Fugazi. And both of those bands drew tons of people. Like, Fugazi was huge. And they had this disruptive element of skinheads coming to their shows as well. And so I watched these different punk scenes. Different cities have different scenes. and they all uniformly rejected this. There was a group, I believe, out of Illinois, the Sharps, Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice. And they're skinheads, but they're on the good side. And they would find the bad guys and just go, not at this show, man. You guys got to go. And I remember many times in those days from the stage, I would say, hey, you want your money back? We'll give like all 4 of you guys your money back if you'll leave right now. And they would just flip me off and Sieg Heil me and whatever. And so I noticed, at least at my shows, by the time the 80s ended and the 90s began, those people had gone. And either they found the ticket prices for my show objectionable, whatever, or they didn't like the music, or hopefully they just found that there were no takers for what they were trying to hand out. And so basically, bad forces saw punk rock as an opportunity to recruit angry white males. And that punk rock scene then was full of angry young males. I was one of them. But it's never going to be white nationalism or Nazism or racism that's going to get anything from me but vigorous objection. And so it was a moment. And nowadays I go to shows and it's always funny. I'm the old guy at the show and I stand at the back so no young whippersnapper runs by me and breaks my hip. So I'm not aware of a skinhead element at any show I've been to, honestly, for a really long time. And that's good, but maybe I'm just not going to the shows where those people hang out. So I don't know if it's all gone away. But I think in this, again, tying this back into our president, that he's not vigorously pushing against this, that he seems to be cozying up with these people, really takes the wind out of your sails, and on a deeper level, it's heartbreaking that he won't just say, no, that's wrong. That's a bad idea. Let's not do that. Other presidents, ones that you may have liked or not liked so much, none of them would have tolerated this. They would have vigorously called it out. They certainly would have had dinner with some of these people or been opaque or neutral, good people on both sides, that whole kind of neither here nor there. And that disappoints me because, just an opinion, I don't think Donald Trump, I saw this early in his first administration, he didn't understand the incredible power of the office. The president of the United States is arguably the most powerful person in the world, the commander-in-chief in charge of the most lethal, well-equipped, technologically intense military force. We can blow up the entire universe. And the person who has control of that must be my opinion, again, a 3-dimensional chess player. It's not checkers. It's not tic-tac-toe. Ultimately, you are sending young men and women somewhere where they might not come back alive, or they might not come back completely intact as they left. And before you do that, you better have a whole lot of meetings with a whole lot of experts and liaise with Congress and talk to a whole bunch of people before you send one person that risks a skinned elbow, much less a catastrophic injury. And this president, in my opinion, doesn't get that. He digs his power, it seems to me, but he doesn't understand that when he says something, he can affect the stock market. He can change the course of rivers. And if it were me, I would be wielding that power with an unbelievable amount of caution, with some people advising me, like, I can't find Venezuela on a map. Bring in the Venezuela expert. Where you had some presidents who could tell you, here's the last 5 presidents that country had. Here's what the Tet Offensive was. I mean, we've had some really smart presidents in times of war and in times of peace. And we don't have one now. And I'm not trying to get beaten up by some Trump fan, but you have to admit, this guy is incredibly inarticulate and he broad brushes topics that should be painted with a 1 camel hairbrush. Some of this stuff is really tricky and really delicate. And look, you said you wanted to talk about Venezuela. So I guess we're talking about these crazy, grainy camera shots of boats turning into smithereens. And there's been a bunch of them. I don't know how many. And so far, and I'm just a normal citizen news consumer, but I haven't seen any hard information on any of these boats, any of these people, or any tangible proof that. And when the Pentagon says we have overwhelming proof, what do I know? I know nothing. I can't get into the Pentagon. I read my news and get my news like millions of other people in this country do from news outlets, but no one has shown me any proof. And if you're going to be blowing up boats with ammunitions in our name, when you might, can't you just interdict with Coast Guard? Like, isn't there another way to do this where we can
There you go.
arrest the guys and like, how about this? Show me the dope. Show me the dope. Show me the dope. Or show me the blowed up bodies in the water. Like, stop with the grainy, camera kaboom. Show me and give me the names, because you're doing this in my name, in our name. And the rest of the world is watching. And that idea of the isolationist America, which used to be popular many, many years ago in our country, I'm against it. And in this age of insane interconnectivity, when you can go to the supermarket year round and buy fruits and vegetables because we get them from all over the world, as we chase the summer months around the world so you can get avocados whenever. We are interconnected from everything from how we eat to what we drink to how we travel. And this Venezuela thing, it really, it stinks because there's no information. I can believe now. Congress seems to have abdicated their role. As there's three separate and co-equal branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. That's the first three parts of the Constitution. Article 1, 2, and 3, legislative, executive, and judicial. That the Congress is not saying, hey, man, power of the purse, you don't do anything without, you barely get your car washed without us. We're Congress. Like, we're the pain in your neck. Like, we got the purse strings. The fact that they're not reminding the president on a daily basis, on a minute-to-minute basis of this, really disappoints me. I'm a high school graduate. I barely got out of high school. I have the knowledge of a slug. All these people are vastly more intelligent than me, and they're getting all kinds of information. That they're just watching this happen, it's awful. And to make it worse, Trump treats this like some street fight. Oh, yeah. He's talking about putting boots on the ground. As you know, the USS with Gerald Ford, right, is in invasive waters around Venezuela, right? He might think him and Hegseth might think that's some cool kick-ass thing to do. The rest of the world sees that and goes, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
No other president would have done that.
That's exactly right. And Henry, this is why I wanted you on the show now and as often as you'll come, because I really think you understand deeply how interconnected all these pieces are. And, Chris suggested we might need to break this into 2 shows, and we might do that because I want people to understand how much you understand. And in preparation for this show, I was thinking about leadership and thinking about media, and there's a lot of talk about, Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk and guys like Dave Portnoy and McAfee. But before Joe Rogan, there was Henry Rollins. And before, Charlie Kirk, you talked about how you would debate people. Portnoy, is this populist guy. And I don't mean that to compare you to them in terms of their positions or their morals, but the way you have been able to understand the real people in this country and working people and people who feel disconnected and feel angry, but also, are cool or want to be cool and want to be around music and culture. Henry, your role over this last few decades has been so important. And I want to do all I can to amplify your thoughtfulness and your perspective and your leadership, because it is where a lot of this came from. But like so many things in this country, got twisted. Like Trump, is a lot like Henry Rollins, but a twisted up, mangled, racist, fascist kind of version of it, right? But the spirit of what you bring is something that has been so important. I think about somebody like Colonel Hackworth or Joey Gallup, people who were kind of guardians of our democracy, keepers of the flame. And I put you in that category because just hearing you talk about how to fight extremism and also how to offer an alternative, I think is one of the most important issues in this country. We've talked about it with Scott Galloway. I've talked about it with Wes Moore, this idea that there are angry, disconnected people who feel like they're getting a raw deal, which is more and more people. And they're more and more angry men who also have access to guns. And that's a dangerous situation in Iraq or in America. So you have always understood that. And let me ask you to build on something, Henry. You told me once about how you prepared for each show, and something you would recite to yourself. I think I'm sure you remember, or maybe you remember what I'm talking about. But you have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Constitution. You know your shit, and I think that's really important because there are a lot of people now who have plenty of opinions but don't read the books. And you read the books, you read the books, you've talked to people, you've absorbed their stories, you've traveled all around the world, and I maybe would ask you, how do you approach leadership? Because what you have done for many years, and especially in those moments, when you had an audience at your fingertips, right? And you could have said, okay, we're going to do a mean thing, but we're going to do a kind thing. And I see this a lot in music. Disturbed is one example, right? David Draymond, I don't know if you know him or you know the band, but they're heavy metal. I've been a big fan for a long time, right? It's like that dark grinding metal that people would expect to be maybe mean if you're on the outside, but he's always very kind, and he welcomes people, and he brings kids up on stage, and he does things to make people feel welcome at their shows. And it's so important. And other artists do it too. But you know the power of having an audience in the palm of your hand. You've talked to me about how you even hold the mic. Folks want to go back and hear the episode we recorded in 2020. You talked about how you first, landed on stage and how you held the mic. But now you've got this perspective. Can you talk about how you view the responsibility of leadership? And how you talked a bit about how we're seeing the antithesis of that, but I think it's important for people to understand how Henry Rollins views leadership and manhood, masculinity, whatever we want to call it. You're a man, right? Our kids are looking for role models, and I want them to have role models like you. But how do you think about all that?
Well, when I started doing music, suddenly I'm on TV. I'm 64. I've been in front of camera since I was 19, and I've lacked anonymity. Like when I leave the house, I just basically leave my First and Fourth Amendment rights on the kitchen table because that's over with. Because it's like, hey, man, yeah, it is what it is. And so I learned with music, between songs, you can say things and everyone's going to listen. What can they? You have the PA. They're going to hear only you. And it never thrilled me. It never was like, okay, I didn't exactly fear it. It was to me like carrying a very thin vial of nitroglycerin. And if you handle it without extreme care, everything blows up. And so I have always, and as I get older, I try and get better at it. I've always tried to speak very clearly. And as I get older, very carefully. And as a young person with all of this thrust upon them, sure, there's some glitches here and there as a young man will zig when he should have zagged, whatever. But I'm very careful to listen. Like one night I was on stage talking about a battered woman who she called the cops and said, this is the third time my husband has beat me up. And I said, well, why was there a second and a third? Why don't you just evacuate after the first time? I just don't understand that. And I talked to a woman after the show, and she said, Henry, you're a good guy, but you're poorly informed on this topic. Here's why women don't leave. Because there's kids, because their credit card, it might be in the husband's name. There's where are they going to go at 3 a.m. with all those kids with nowhere to go because the mother is in upstate and they're in Seattle. And there's a lot of nuance in that. And you really need to understand that a lot goes on in these relationships. And I was like, wow, thank you so much. And I found out more information. I evolved. And so to me, the idea of leadership, if someone's going to listen to you, and when I go out on stage and talk for 2.5 hours, I assume they're listening. I call myself a chef, and I'm trying to sling the highest nutritional hash that I can. If you're going to consume what I'm putting out there, it's got to be fact checked as much as I can. I got to get the quotes right or make a joke if I get it wrong. Luckily, they can all look it up on their phone in real time. And so for me, I don't consider myself a leader of anything, but I am listened to. And while I don't take myself seriously, I take the audience and anyone listening to me with extreme seriousness. Because when you're establishing a verbal communication, there is some trust involved. Like, you and I have known each other for many, many years. And in my opinion, you're a good man and I trust you. You've proven that over and over again. What is your responsibility to that? Well, it's just, you just are you and you show up to do that thing, be yourself every day. And so I'm very aware as an old guy that people have read my books. They've heard the records. They have seen me, or they go online and listen or watch something. I treat all of that with great care and great caution. And that, to me, maybe you could call that leadership, in that you feel the responsibility that you're being heard. I'm not an elected official. I would never, too many suits and ties for me. It's not me. Also, I just don't have the intellect. But you see other politicians who are living and breathing right now, and you see they understand the power of their position, and they choose their words carefully. And I must say, it dismays me when I see any politician, when they kind of let their tie down and let some S-bomb fly or whatever, like on CNN or wherever else. You're like, really, man? Like, upgrade. Like, nothing, Obama.
Can I pause you there? Because like many
course.
people right now, I'm thinking like, you say, you can't get dressed up, and Fetterman has absolutely disrupted the expectation of what people can look like. I watched him yesterday
I'm
on The
glad you
View.
brought
He had
his
a
name up.
Carhartt switch. He looks like Brian Dable or like a washed up football coach. I mean, that's not a standard anymore. Now it's authenticity. So when what do you think of when you see John Fetterman with a hooded sweatshirt and, looking like he just fell out of bed?
I've been waiting for years for someone to ask me that question. I'm not kidding. And you can call me any name in the book. It'll probably be true. I can't tell you how much that disappoints me. Like, he shows up in a hooded sweatshirt. Like, you're an elected official. Like, come on, man. You're like get it together. Like, I don't want to bro down with you. Like, what are we going to shoot some hoops? Like, come on. It really disappoints me, because it just says, like, you're taking your job casually when you are representing people who are depending on you. You should maybe dress like you're a little bit afraid of your constituents. I mean, if it were me, I'd be in a suit that didn't move with a tie that strangled me. I'd be early. I'd be prepared. I'd have a shaven face, and I wouldn't smell like beer, man. I just, and I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying, when I see him, he disappoints me, and I do not take him seriously, just because I don't think he takes the job seriously.
I was dying to hear that, because, but folks don't know, even when you do show up, I mean, you've done so many events for veterans with me. I think the very first IAVA event, you were our MC. You showed up, you were locked in. I mean, you have your uniform. You have the black on black. You were focused, you were prepared. You were like, tell me where I need to be. I mean, you have a spirit of execution and discipline that is a part of why I know you're so successful. But I'm with you. Like, when I see that, he doesn't look like he is taking it seriously enough or caring about how he is presenting himself.
That's how it comes off to me. I've never met the man.
Look, I grew up, unfortunately, my parents dragged me to church, and I remember, I had to dress to go to church. I couldn't wear shorts. I couldn't wear a hat, right? I couldn't wear a hat at the dinner table. And some of the formality is unnecessary, but some of it is also about focusing you on the job at hand and owning the role and wanting to be taken seriously. And to Mom Donnie's credit, I mean, Mom Donnie could have a t-shirt on, but he's buttoned up in a suit every single time because he knows he's a young man and he's got to communicate some seriousness. But I also will tell you, Henry, that you should never say no to politics, because folks are going to say that they want you in because you have a voice that is so informed, and you are smarter than most members of Congress. The idea that members of Congress are smart or disciplined, that is no longer the truth anymore. All right, everybody, we're going to pause my conversation with Henry Rollins right here. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. It's inspiring, it's enlightening, it's funny, it's fierce. It's everything that's great about this country and everything that's great about independent Americans. So we're going to pause it here, come back tomorrow for part 2 of my amazing conversation with the great Henry Rollins. I hope you'll watch on YouTube. You'll listen on Spotify as we continue to speak truth to power, bring you conversations that will add light to contrast the heat. Henry Rollins is exactly why I do this show and why I hope you can spread the message far and wide about what we're doing here at Independent Americans. He's a voice that you need to hear now, an important, iconic, inspiring American that is representing the best of what this country is all about. So come back tomorrow for part 2 of my conversation with Henry Rollins on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Pods, and at independentamericans.us. If you like this now, share it far and wide. and invite others to declare their independence. And join me back here tomorrow for part 2 of this amazing conversation with the great Henry Rollins. Until then, an early happy birthday to my wife. Happy Veterans Day to everyone else. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay vigilant, America. And come back tomorrow for more Henry Rollins.
Powered by Righteous Media.